Championship Series for this year. I'm your host for the weekend, Oliver Gurman, and I'm joined here by Rob, Grace and Hooley.
Nice to be here.
We have 1,440 players, making this the third largest European Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship of all time.
Fantastic.
And it's, of course, the largest one of the year. The two larger events have been held in 2013. That was YCS Bochum with 1,455 and YCS London with 1,466. Maybe you can hear some cheering in the background. That is our head judge making his opening announcements, telling the guys in the venue pretty much the same thing that I'm telling you guys. And there's so much to look forward to this weekend.
Definitely. We've got some very strong decks in the meta at the moment. We've got a lot of very big name players that are in attendance today as well, because Italy has a huge player base as well. You find some of the biggest tournaments are actually usually here.
Yep.
If you go past, as you said, I believe this one's the third. If you go beyond this, you're back in Italy.
Yeah.
Basically.
Italy has been doing very well at the European Championship, especially. They have almost every year they are sending one or even more representatives to the World Championship. So you can expect the level of competition very high this weekend.
Yes, especially because in the last YCS, we did actually have an Italian champion as well.
True that, yeah, with Marcello Barberi, who took it all down. The luckiest guy in London is what we called him, being 33rd after the Swiss rounds and then locking himself up in the top 32 after one result changed. But that's not the story of the weekend. The big story of the weekend is the arrival of a new deck with Qliphort making its first mark on the competitive scene in Europe. And the other two decks, they shouldn't be discarded yet. We still got Burning Abyss and, of course, the Shadow Monsters.
Yes.
What do you expect this weekend? What's going to be the most popular deck?
I would probably say Qliphort would probably be the most popular deck,
right.
just because it's a brand new deck and it's extremely powerful against both Burning Abyss and Shadow. But Burning Abyss does have the upper hand at the moment due to the introduction of Fire Lake, really getting rid of the pendulum monsters that make Qliphort work and getting rid of a lot of Shadow cards.
If that sounds a little bit confusing to you, if you haven't been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The last 2 weeks, don't worry. We will have your back. We will have an app with all the cards information on the right-hand side of the screen when we take you to the feature match. Speaking of feature matches, for round one, we have invited two veterans to the table. It's Callum Bilbe from the UK, from your home country.
Yes.
And he's going to go up against Paolo Pachiana from Italy. So he's the hometown hero here. I'm not quite sure if he's from Milan. He's
Not
definitely
too sure.
from Italy, of course.
Yes.
He has been doing very well at the last two events, both in Madrid with his... He was the first player that made left a very huge mark on the competitive scene with playing not only Burning Abyss in one deck, but also Shadol's. The Shadol Burning Abyss deck. What do you think about that? 60 cards.
It's a huge deck. I mean, it sounds like it would be inconsistent, but it proved us wrong.
Yeah, he did prove us wrong. And not just once, but twice. Not with the same deck, but in London he also advanced to the top 8. This time with just a Shadol deck. I said just. But once again, excellent showing by Paolo Pachiana.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Now, looking at the deck currently, because we actually only have Callum's deck list at the moment.
Yeah.
Looking at it at the moment, it's a standard Qliphort build with just a couple of changes. I mean, he's playing the standard 2 Qliphort Helix, 3 Qliphort Carrier, 3 Scout. He's also running 3 Disc, but he's also maining 2 Maxi. So he is...
Somewhat prepared for
Yeah, he's definitely thinking there's going to be a lot of special summoning. Plus, he's really, really prepared for the mirror match because he's looking at 3 Mystical Space Typhoon, 3 Dust Tornado with the main deck. He does actually also side 2 Night Beams, yes, rather than 3. So he's really, really prepared just to get rid of anything that's going to stop him making his combos.
Right.
Paolo
is also running Qliphort. As you said, we don't have his deck list, but he just flashed me a Qliphort Scout. And he's like, this is what I'm playing. So then again, he has been known to include some cards in his main deck that give him the upper hand, either against some of the most popular decks, which, as we said before, is going to be Burning Abyss, Shadol's, and Qliphort this weekend. He might also have some tweaks for the mirror match.
It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yes.
It's going to be nice to see some surprising cards come out.
Yeah.
Looking at the side deck as well, Callum here is actually siding Spell Shattering Arrow as well, which is an incredibly, incredibly powerful card against Qliphort.
It's a card that hasn't been seeing a lot of play in a very long time.
Yes.
And just now with Pendulum Summons becoming more and more popular, it's becoming a real thing again. Spell Shattering Arrow destroying all face-up spell cards on your opponent's side of the field.
Yes, and then inflicting 500 damage. So it could be a game ender basically, against Qliphort, because they pay a lot of life points. Every life point counts at Qliphort, simply because they have to pay for that scout.
Right. We will take you to the table in just a second. If you don't know how pendulum summons are working, let's just run you through that real quick. There are two new zones on the field, on the left-hand side of the field and the right-hand side, called the pendulum zones.
Yes.
You can play pendulum monsters in there that are actually like a spell card as long as they're in there.
They have a spell effect, yes, that's just underneath the artwork, and they also have a monster effect, which is underneath that effect.
But that's not active while it's in the pendulum zone.
No, it's only active when it's a monster. The spell effect is only active when it's a pendulum zone. Now, they also have pendulum scales on them, which is red and blue. Depending on which side you have them, you could, if you have, let's say, a 1 in this side and a 9 in the other, you can special summon all monsters from your extra deck, which is where the pendulum monsters go, and any monster in your hand between the levels of 1 and 9.
That
straight
sounds
to the field.
extremely explosive, and
Yes.
I'm 100% certain that we're going to see that right now in our round 1 feature match of YCS Milan. So let's take you to the table where Callum, on the left-hand side from the UK, is going up against Paolo on the right-hand side. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we do have informations for you. This is the hand that Paolo has drawn into, but it appears that Callum is going first, and this is his hand, and I wouldn't be surprised if his first play would be an upstart goblin here.
And there's 2 upstart goblins that have just come out, increasing Paolo's life points by 2,000. I mean, that's going to be a few scout searches. Although, as we say, Callum doesn't know that he's playing against Qliphort yet. He's played the carrier there, I believe, with
I think
sacrifice.
it looks like he's out of cards in his hand, so he basically put all the cards on the field, which will be reflected in our app in just a second. There you go. This is his opening move, and now it's Paolo's turn. He's got a better opening, I would say, than the upstart goblin. He's using Summoner's Art.
He's got 2 Summoner's Art in hand, so that immediately means he's got 2 scouts in his hand, because Summoner's Art can only search for a normal monster with level 5 or higher. So the only card in your deck is
a scout. Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, because Summoner's Art, I mean, it's a very powerful tutor, but there have never been any good targets for it, I would say.
There was a long time ago, but not in a very long time.
So here we go with the first attempt to go for the scout play.
Scout paid 800. Of course, the life points. I'm not quite sure whether he paid the life points there before the Mystical Space Typhoon was used. Oh, yep, there we go.
Yeah, and then he just changed the Mystical.
Yeah, because it's no longer on the field and it's been sent to the graveyard, he doesn't get his search. But the second Summoner's Art there, getting him another scout, so he's going to be able to make the play straight away again.
Right, so it looks like Callum is still in a very good position here.
Oh, he doesn't have that Mystical Space Typhoon set there anymore, so that scout is definitely going to go off.
Yeah, he doesn't have any more protection really, now, does he?
Well, he has the Solemn Warning to stop any sort of ideas of pendulum summoning, and the bottomless trap hole as well. Because all of the Qliphort monsters, when they come out, if they're pendulum summoned, they'll all be 1800 attack and level 4. They'll all be removed from play and destroyed by bottomless trap hole.
Yeah, which is very good against this particular archetype.
Yes.
So, yeah, looks like he's got some protection, but at the same time, he's going to pay a lot of life points for that. It's going to be some investment that he has to make. So let's take another look at Paolo's hand here.
Now, he's gone for the
second
Qliphort disc there.
Ah, yeah. This is his search target for Qliphort Scout. Let's bring that up for you guys.
Now, if he goes for a major play here without protection... Oh, no, he's just going for a straight-up carrier.
And it looks like... I can't imagine that Callum is not going to respond to that.
Well, he's playing it safe at the moment, because he knows that there's a disc in hand there. And if he was to actually do what would be the one-turn kill of this deck, is essentially to put carrier into the pendulum zone, pendulum summon the scout, and then equip it with sacrifice, tributing it for disc. Disc would then have 2,800 monsters. If he's waiting for it, oh, there we go, the bottomless trap hole takes it out, so it's not going to the extra deck there, so he's not going to be able to get it back out. If he was to go for that now, he risks the fact that his discs will be destroyed at the end of the turn. That's why Skill Drain, I believe he's got there, well, he's just set, is a very important card in this deck.
Yeah, Skill Drain, also a card that has a lot of... works well together with the Qliphort archetype, because you don't really mind if your monsters don't have an effect when half of them say, you can normal summon me, and I will go down to 1,800 attack.
Negating that, then you suddenly got a field full of 2,400 and 2,800 attack monsters.
Right, so the card that Callum has drawn into is a Dust Tornado, so another protection against the many, well, spell and trap cards, and especially the Pendulum monsters that go into the Pendulum Zone. And he just activated that when Paolo was going for another search. Paolo did draw into a second copy of Skill Drain. It's not really what he needs right now.
Okay, the disc comes out and Solemn Warning takes it down. And that does go to the graveyard there, if anybody was wondering. If you negate the summon of a Qliphort monster, it goes directly to the graveyard.
Oh, that's a very good draw from Callum, isn't it? That's a...
Now he has the Sacrifice, he has the Carrier, he has the Scout. He could go for the disc. I believe he may be doing. He's thinking about it. It's there on the top of his deck. But there's so much in front of Paolo that it's just kind of going to put him off. But if we actually look at Paolo's field there, you can see...
There we go.
That there really is nothing there.
Yeah.
At all.
It
I
looks,
mean, if he
looks
plays
very
the skill,
threatening.
If he plays the skill drain, then he's going to be helping his opponent.
Yeah.
The sacrifices just aren't helping him right now with no monsters.
He's going to pay
equip it
1,000 life points just to activate skill drain, and then he's taking even more damage from these.
And he's taking the bluff.
So sacrifice a card. If you're not familiar with it, it only works with a Qliphort monster or Qli monster that you already have on the field.
And he lets it sit there, basically. Be able to be 2 tributes just to be able to bring out that disc. The alternative of disc is Qliphort Shell. Some people main deck one of those just because it's as big as disc and can attack twice. Now, Qliphort also have an effect, which is that they are unaffected by the effects of monsters that are a lower level than them. So it's just a
What is Callum searching for here? Like, what's his #1 target?
Now, with disc, he could bring out generally 2 more discs. I believe he may have actually just drawn into that. He's paid 800. I think he's just going to go full force. The skill drain there, stopping the disc from special summoning 2. The Scout then getting...
Yeah, so it's actually, for Paolo, it's not that bad to flip skill drain in this situation.
It was the sacrifice there, sorry, that got the Scout. Because when sacrifice is destroyed, it goes to the graveyard and he can get a Qli card from the deck to hand.
Right. And in this camera angle, you can see that we got 2 volunteers standing behind the players that are providing us with all that information that we can show to you guys here. So Paolo did draw into Performapal Trampolinx.
Right, Performapal Trampolinx, one of the best cards in this deck. You pay 800 to search with Scout. You use Trampolinx and Scout to then Pendulum Summon, which returns Scout to your hand, and then you can play Scout again, and then pay another 800 life points and get another card.
But with 1,700 life points, that doesn't sound like the best plan, does it?
Now, that's not Paolo that's got that there, is it? Is it?
Yeah, it's Paolo who's got
right, he set it face down.
Yeah.
Okay. Paolo is not in a good position right now, basically.
Not at all, no.
And it's becoming quite clear that Callum realizes this.
Yeah, he sees there are 3 face down cards and a monster set, but they don't seem to be able to stop my attacks. So he's just going for it. But he's got the Scout and the Scout is, of course, in the Pendulum Zone. This is sometimes a little bit confusing because we cannot really tell the difference. But he's got the Disc, the Helix, and here he attacks for game, and Paolo just, of course, he doesn't reveal his face down cards. This is something that you sometimes see if a less experienced player is going up against one of the veterans. When he's getting attacked for game, he's flipping his face down cards. He's like, yeah, I got nothing. And showing his opponent, oh, these are the cards in my deck. And the veteran will always be like, well, thank you for that extra information.
Pretty much.
I'm going to make a lot of use with that in the following 2 rounds.
Now, it's time for the side deck.
Yeah. So this is where the cards that you mentioned before from Callum are going to come in.
Possibly. I mean, he's looking at what just happened there. And I would be wondering whether it would be worth deciding every single one, especially with the win so easy. But
Yeah.
that's a trap that you can fall into.
Yeah.
Because that just means that his deck didn't work on that occasion.
It looks like the siding action is mostly on Paolo in this situation, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And he is siding quite a few cards there by the look of it as well, from what we can see from our camera angle.
Yeah, we got a second camera, so we always know whether the camera is on us, which can be sometimes a little bit intimidating. You can, of course, tell. And sometimes we get a second camera which shows us what the players are doing at all times. So even if sometimes there's a ruling dispute on the table, so a judge needs to come over and sometimes translate something, which is a very frequent thing in Europe with so many different languages being spoken. And sometimes it's just a normal rulings question.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, do we see anything super interesting from Paolo here?
Oh, I can see. Well, I've not really seen what Paolo has been doing there, but I've just seen Callum put the spell shafting arrows into a shortlist. So that's going to be they are going to be coming and seeing
That's
play.
not very surprising.
But it looks like he's just taking out Vanity's Emptiness, which is interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, Vanity's Emptiness, one of the most format-defining cards of the recent months, I would say. When it first came out, some players were like, oh, I'm not sure about this card. It has a very even effect. It affects both players evenly. It doesn't allow you to special summon any monsters anymore. However, most of the time you just assemble your field, put like 3 monsters there, special summon them, and then you flip Vanity's Emptiness.
Yep.
So your opponent cannot do the same. And this makes a very big difference.
Some interesting sides.
Yeah, Paolo
really
seems to be done already with the siding. He's already shuffling. While Callum is still going over the cards. I think it looks like Upstart Goblin is going out. No. That would be interesting because Upstart Goblin is it's a card that some argue about when especially when Soul Charge came out, whether you still want to run Upstart Goblin.
Yes. Yeah.
At the moment, is there anything like keeping you from playing that card?
Basically, the possibility that your opponent is going to be playing Qliphort is one of the major ones. But also, Soul Charge is still a threat. In quite a few decks, not necessarily in Qli, but definitely in decks like Yang Zing.
Right, so this is very interesting. Callum is also changing the sleeves just to make perfectly sure that all of his sleeves are in the same condition. This can sometimes be a problem when you're playing with extremely shiny sleeves, that after the first game or after a few rounds of playing, that the side deck cards will still look like fresh.
Yeah.
And the other cards, or the sleeves, will look very used. And then you can tell the difference between the cards in your deck, the main deck and the side deck cards. And this, of course, can give you a big advantage that you know, oh, I'm going to draw into that side deck card in one turn. And if you're only loading your side deck with strong answers against a deck like Qliphort, then this is a big advantage. And you're going to get penalized for that.
Yeah, yeah, you will. You don't want to get stung, especially an event at this level for having marked sleeves.
So this is the safe approach that Callum went with. It looks a little weird here, like he's playing memory. Right, these are the cards that were sided out. Quite interesting.
Well, some of them yes, some of them no. Some of them was his shortlist. It's interesting that he's playing Dark Bribe, because Dark Bribe is one of those things that people stopped playing because giving your opponent a draw was such an advantage for them.
Right.
And
So
a lot of people just started playing 7 Tools of the Bandit and kind of brought it back. But if you're playing it in Qliphort, you really don't want to be spending life points when you've got more important things to spend life points on.
Yeah. So one thing we're going to do this weekend again is ask you guys what do you think is gonna win. So we're going to run some polls this weekend where you can cast your vote, and the question here is, do you think that who's going to take the second game? Is it going to be Callum or is it going to go Paolo? Very easy, just use the commands that we have on the right hand side of the screen. So you can cast your vote and tell us whether you think that the Italian will come back or whether the UK will take the whole match by storm. So here we got the hand from Paolo loading in first.
And that's unfortunate to get two trample lynxes in your hand, especially because the effect you want to have something else.
Yeah.
You don't want a pendulum lock
And
yourself.
he doesn't have a searcher to get his hands on the scout. So it's not looking too good here now, is it?
Now they're both running Dust Tornado, which is nice to see. It's always nice to see older cards come back. Now there's a Scout Summoner's Art, which is great because especially if you're going second, like what just happened there, and your Scout gets destroyed, just search for another one. Simple as.
Yeah. So Paolo went first. He set a Mystical Space Typhoon and a Dust Tornado. He uses the Dust Tornado first. Not that surprising because it's mostly the slightly worse card. I mean, if you have them both in your hand, because you can activate the Mystical Space Typhoon the turn you draw into it.
Yeah. But Summoners Art getting another Scout. Fortunately, that Scout is probably going to get Mystical Space Typhoon. Is unfortunately then setting up Callum for a fall.
Yeah, he already lost 2 of his Scouts there. So it doesn't seem like he's going to have a lot of searching.
There's the Mystical Space Typhoon.
Yep, no surprise there.
So I believe that should be 1,600 life points off of Callum.
Yeah.
And another 1,000 onto Paolo.
And he makes the gap even larger. Interestingly enough, he first tried to thin out his deck with the search effects.
Oh, and he draws into his third Summoner's Art.
Wow, that is really strong.
It's lucky.
Yeah, this is really like, Paolo needs an answer for that last Scout.
And he just doesn't have one.
Yeah, not at this point in time. He doesn't. He can bounce it back with trampolines, but I don't think that's going to be the plan here.
No.
So this is very, very good news for all the UK fans out there. Callum just running through 3 copies of his Scout on his opening turn. His opponent Paolo having an answer to 2 of them, but the third time is the charm in this situation. He does get to search, and
it's very interesting that he didn't go for the win this turn.
yeah, he now...
Because with the 2 Scouts there in the extra deck, he would have been able to easily Pendulum Summon.
Both
if he would have
of them.
searched for the disc,
Yeah.
he would have been able to bring out the disc and then essentially win that turn.
Is the sacrifice...
The sacrifice wouldn't have been needed, simply because he already has 2 Scouts there in his extra deck that he could have Pendulum Summoned out.
All right, so what are we missing here?
It's basically...
The Helix... I mean, everything...
If he would have searched... Oh, that's a good point. He did have 2 Helixes in his hand rather than a carrier. So the sacrifice is setting it up there. Monarch Storm 4th there, tributing.
Oh, that's most likely a card from the side. Oh,
Tributing for a carrier, which is interesting because then it has an effect to put one card back into... Well, one monster card back into hand on your opponent's side of the field. Not quite sure why that was there, but sacrifice going to the graveyard.
Did
Now going
Paolo
to get
have
the carry?
any other moves that he could go for?
Not necessarily, but he's getting the carrier off the field. Unfortunately, with this, well, the Helix, sorry, but then with the sacrifice, he's just going to replace it.
All right.
And if Paolo really doesn't have any answers, then if this next turn is played correctly, it's going to be the last turn.
Might be over in just a second, yeah. And Paolo, you can tell by his demeanor here, he's not looking too happy. Quite the opposite, I would say. And Callum checking everything again, making sure that the life points are correct. I mean, it doesn't look like it when you look at the life points. Is Callum really at 3,200?
Yes.
After that attack,
because of the attack and because of the...
Yeah. But it doesn't matter that much. Qliphort doesn't really mind being low on life points.
No.
As long as it can go for that one big play. And this is what's happening here. This is the Pendulum Summon. No, he first searches, okay.
Which
Not
should
surprising.
be a search for disc.
All right, let's see if
And there's the disc.
There's the disc.
Yeah, the play is going to go very similarly to just Pendulum Summoning, Tribute Summoning, Special Summoning 2 from his deck, and then winning.
Yeah, he's already having his hand on his extra deck with the face-up Pendulum Monsters. There they are. And
And I believe that was is that 2 helixes he's just special summoned, or?
We're going to
Yes,
have that
it
in
is.
just a second, yeah.
Now, Helix's tribute effect isn't really helping here. It just destroys the spell trap card on your opponent's side of the field. But with 2 discs, he's playing
And this is
2 carriers.
what Qliphort really does best.
Yeah.
Such an explosive turn.
Now, there's a Book of Moon there in hand, which means that he didn't necessarily need to do that. And I believe that isn't quite enough to win.
You see, short like just a few life points, right?
Yeah.
But
it's very, very close.
Yeah.
Those 2 get destroyed at the end of the turn, which is fine because he's got these 2 pendulum cards. Oh, there's the spell shattering arrow. Doesn't necessarily actually help.
Doesn't really get rid of the cards on the field, the monsters on the field.
It's going to deal 1,000 damage to his opponent, but unfortunately that's just not enough.
Yeah, still 1,400 remaining for Callum. And Paolo, with the trampolines, he can, well, defend himself from 1 attack. But there's, of course, a second monster.
Okay, he's, oh, and there's Mystical Space Typhoon in the end phase.
So he can't even use the spell shattering arrow. And that is it.
Yep, that is it.
That is it for our
Paolo
first.
very admirably just playing it out.
Yeah, this is a little bit like adding insult to injury, isn't it?
And he's just summoned a bunch of monsters in 1 turn.
Which is no longer illegal. You can do it even when you don't have as much money as Kaiba. It's a lot easier.
Oh,
than
and he's searched for another disc, tribute something to the disc, carrier's effect, bounces that back to hand, and
yeah,
there you go.
And now
There's the win.
Paolo's like, okay, yeah, that's it. You've shown me. You know how this deck works.
That's the true power of
This
football.
is not his deck list. This is his field.
Yes.
This is what the Qliphort archetype can do. You have seen it in the first round feature match. Might be looking not that impressive if it goes up against another Qliphort deck. But
yes,
they can do that against any deck in the field, really.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, what they really struggle against is Burning Abyss because of Fire Lake. Fire Lake essentially just activating 2 of the Burning Abyss effects and then getting rid of all of the pendulum cards.
Right.
The other deck that it kind of struggles against, if it kicks off, is Yang Xing because of Bashia.
Yeah.
Bashia's effect is that when it's synchro summoned, you return 3 cards on the field back to the deck.
Yeah.
Which also can be done in your opponent's turn.
So, interestingly enough, we have talked to quite a few of the named players, and when you ask them what you're playing, it's almost always one of the 3 decks. It's almost always either Shadow, Burning Abyss, or Qliphort. How come that nobody seems to have Yang Xing on the map, apart from, of course, you and Matt Bell, who might be at home watching this?
It was also Jerome Mikhail, who's the R&D guy, Matt Bell of America, basically. It's a strange one. People aren't playing it at the moment because they just don't feel that it's as strong as other decks. It can be very slow. A lot of people are trying to play control variants of it, whereas you can actually get a really nice rush of just making 1 invincible monster on the first turn. As I said, which you'll probably see in one of the pre-recorded contents that we did, you've got a 53% chance of opening on turn 2 if you go second, or on turn 1 if you go second, with a Xiao to be able to make one of the most an invincible monster and have a Night Beam or a Mystical Space Typhoon to stop your opponent stopping you doing it.
That sounds like a real thing to me.
It's ridiculous. It really is. People need to start picking it up.
It's very interesting. We might be seeing Yang Xing at the top of the standings at the end of the day. What proved crucial in these 2 games? Well, I mean, it looked a little bit like Paolo was affected by his draw a lot in the second game.
Basically the entire game was due to the fact that Paolo didn't draw into the cards that he would need.
Yeah, he needed something like a scout. Just one scout would have made all the difference.
Yeah, it would have basically just made... If he had the scout and the trampolinks, would have been perfect. But that's the risk that you run when you're running more than 1 trampolinks.
Yes. That's the thing, like, what's your take on this? If you have a card that can be amazing on the opening turn, but only if you have another card in hand. I mean, there are enough searches for Scout. He's got 3 ways to search for Scout, and then he's got Scout, of course, as well.
You've got 3 Scouts, 3 Summoners Art, and then you actually have 3 Sacrifice as well, which you can also search for Scout. A lot of the decks are actually playing Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, which allows you to search for Trampolinks or any other Pendulum card that you need.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'm quite surprised to see that Callum isn't playing it. But again, it's the situation of if you're playing 1 Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and 1 Trampolinks, you may as well just be playing 2 Trampolinks. That's the difference. It's one of those the kind of cards that you don't really necessarily want to draw straight into.
Yeah. What about Paolo's deck? He's got the skill drain in the main deck. Do you agree with that choice, or?
Skill Drain is the best card in this deck. Basically, it's the best. It
But
stops
I think
your
Callum is
opponent
not
doing
pl-
a
oh,
lot.
he is playing
Callum
it.
is actually playing 2 in his main deck.
Yeah.
Basically because it sets you up for an ability to be able to just go, well, none of your monster effects matter, none of mine matter, really, because they're going to activate in the graveyard, and they're going to be huge.
But with all the Burning Abyss monsters that trigger in the graveyard and the Shadow monsters that trigger in the graveyard, is skill drain really such a big deal?
Yes, especially against Shadow, because you're sitting there and looking at Winder and
yeah.
Construct and Greister and all of these
Those
big monsters
ritual
that
monsters.
are going to stop you from Pendulum Summoning.
Yeah.
All of those fusion monsters, basically, you're going to be getting rid of them. One of the big problems that you have with Qliphort against Shadow is the fact that when Pendulum monsters are destroyed, they go to the extra deck, and when they're Pendulum summoned, then they're from the extra deck, meaning you're setting up Shadow Fusion to really be at its prime. Because, of course, when you've got a monster to summon from the extra deck on the field, your opponent can then use Shadow Fusion by sending materials from the deck to the graveyard.
Right.
That's why it kind of punishes you from running anything in from your extra deck, which was kind of interesting, because one of the decks that we originally selected for this, which we really wanted to look, but it turned out that they weren't actually playing it, was Monarch Stone.
Shame on you, Jörg Müller. He handed in his deck list, which is something you can do when you're attending one of the larger events. On the official coverage website, we will have a link on the Twitch chat and in our little ticker down there, but you don't have to type it down. You can also click on one of the links. You can see on the written coverage that you can send in your deck list prior to an event, and that's one of the coolest things, at least if you're also playing that deck at the event. Jörg was sending in something very interesting, but ended up not playing it.
Well, it was a Monarch deck that had no extra deck.
Yeah.
Which is great, because a lot of the Monarch cards actually say if you have no extra deck, then you can negate
something
monster
special
effects.
happens,
You can do all sorts of things. So he was really trying to play to that. And the fact that Monarch's 2,400 attack, 1,000 defense, all of them with Mega Monarch effects, it was going to be good, basically.
Yeah. Shame on him that he doesn't play that. So, if you just tuned in, we are here at YCS Milan all weekend long. 8 rounds of competition today. We've just concluded the first round in our feature match.